Chapter 264, Anxiety. After a couple of more months at Allenwood Prison, one of my appeals against the parole commission was granted, with the judge ruling that they violated my rights by overstepping their boundaries and sentencing me to time that they didn't have the authority to do. A whole 5 years had to be removed that I shouldn't have had in the first place. It was 2010, and my date was now knocked all the way down from 2016 to 2011. At 39 years old, I had less than 1 year left. Man. Plus, if I took 6 months halfway house, I could be leaving here in 90 days. Hell yeah. Let's go. I was ready. I was ready like no other time in my existence. I was ready to enter into a new phase. I was ready to add new chapters into my book of life. My book of chaos was going to transition into my book of redemption. My fight for freedom. The war within. The psychological battle that we all struggle with. To continue fighting or to just go all out. To take out as much people as I could before I took myself. To hurt as much people as I could as I hurt myself. To demolish as much people as I could before I demolish myself. The transition from that mind state was no different from a dope fiend weaning himself off of the needle. We have to get clean. We have to refocus and understand where the real battle was. Within ourselves. To better ourselves and to make others better. I didn't want to be an OT in prison. 40 years old was too old to be bidden. Prison wasn't conducive for old folks. It was a young man's sport. Steel bunks destroyed back muscles and created spinal injuries. Cold concrete rooms caused hypothermia and lung issues. Trashy processed and canned foods caused high cholesterol, and parents and family members dying caused stress. I was more than ready to go. I was even ready to take the halfway house for however long they offered. Any chance someone gets to get out of prison without being a rat or compromising their principles, they should take it. Anything could happen in prison at any time. Though the halfway house was dangerous, and one of my good friends, Cleewood, was just killed in one of them 2 weeks after getting out, I decided that I would rather get out and take my chances there. It was better than being in here. Law. Cleewood was a notorious sticker boy on the streets and in prison. In the streets he carried 244 magnums like Clint Eastwood, so that's how he got the nickname Cleewood. His name was actually Cleveland. We basically grew up together in the system. From the juvenile block up DC jail to Youth Center 1 to Occoquan and the feds. He was robbing other convicts in every prison he went to and was known as a knife pusher. The last time I saw him, we actually slept next to each other at Occoquan. The last thing he said to me was, "Twin, man, we always run into each other in here. You should come on my side sometimes. You should come on my side and help me rob some of them bitch ass niggas." He was from Northeast. I was from Northwest. That was a no-no. He laughed and then said, "Nah, but for real though, it's boring out there, ain't it, twin? Ain't it? Tell the truth, man, it's boring as shit out there. In here, way better, ain't it?" I said, "Clee, I don't know about that." But I understood what he was saying though. he was like me. We had spent most of our adult life behind the wall, so we made the best of it. It became our playground, our free-for-all war zone. The streets had too many rules. Lawson had none. Clee was so notorious in prison that when he got released and was in a halfway house, it seemed that the whole city was talking about it. Cleewood in the halfway house. Hey, Cleewood in the halfway house. Hey, you know Cleewood in the halfway house? I was on the streets when he came home and my phone was ringing off the hook. Cleewood in the halfway house.
Cleewood in the halfway house.
The streets was talking as if who was going to be the first to go get him. Clee had a lot of enemies. Most of them he made while he was in prison. Most of them he made while he was down Lawson. Within a week, Cleewood was dead. In the halfway house. Somebody came through the back door of the halfway house, caught him at a crap game and finished him. A vicious ending for a vicious dude. I decided to walk over to a homie's cell to hip him to my good news. The news that I was going to the halfway house. He was a good man that needed some recognition. A certified soldier with precision that was raised in some extremely rough conditions. A life stricken with bad decisions. Worse than mine. He was in his mid-50s and had been in prison since he was like 9. All he knew was attrition, an institutionalized killer that was dying. I couldn't walk in his cell though. I had to take my shoes off at the door because he had just waxed his floors for the 100th time, it seemed, and he gets offended if anybody walked on his floors. His floors. Those were his floors. And if you violated his floors, that was something you could get killed for. I was somewhat empathetic, but me being able to see my whole face in his floors, I thought it was pathetic. The homie knew nothing else but shackles. He had a life sentence and his cell was his castle. It was his refuge. It was his home. And just like everyone else, everything he owned was in his home, right? So just like everyone else, he protected his home with his life. He welcomed me in as I took my shoes off at the door and walked in. He then offered me something to drink. I obliged as he grabbed the soda from out of the toilet and then he began stuffing his homemade pipe with one small bud. The sodas were kept in the toilet because the toilet water was always freezing cold, so it kept the sodas cold also. I wiped off the top and then drank from the can. Prison life was a life of its own. His homemade pipe was made out of the cardboard inner tube of a toilet paper roll and the metal end of a pencil that held the eraser. He had removed it from the pencil, removed the eraser, squeezed one end of the metal tip until it was almost closed and then filled it with weed. It was big enough to hold just one small bud. He then put a small slit onto the cardboard inner tube and stuffed in the eraser tip filled with the weed. He then put one opening of the inner tube against his mouth and covered the other one with his hand while lighting the eraser tip. It was like smoking a chalice, a kutchie, or a bong. One small bud would take him to Mount Kilimanjaro. He took 2 puffs, then blew the smoke into a towel filled with baby powder, and then shook the towel throughout the room to kill the smell. He then laid back on his bunk and said, "Damn, homie, you about to go back out there, huh?" "Yeah, Slim. I got him this time." I don't think they're gonna be able to hold me. He smiled and said, so what you gonna do when you get out of here, cat daddy? We both laughed at the same time. It was a saying that we got from the beginning of Scarface's song, Never Seen a Man Cry, our favorite artist. So every time someone was going home, we would all say it. So what you gonna do when you get out of here, cat daddy? Oh man, I'ma just take it one day at a time. Going home sometimes created just as much anxiety as when we first came in. Going home to what? Most of us didn't have anything to go home to. Even the ones with something to go home to were still anxious. It was another life-changing transition. Going in prison is one. Leaving prison is another. Especially if you have been in there for years upon years upon years. The familiarity of prison life becomes your familiarity of life as life is. Upsetting that to start life all over brings anxiety to most. But I was more than ready to leave this psych home. But hopefully the anxiety doesn't turn into another relapse, another recidivism, another failure. The homie said, you gonna be alright though. You bettered yourself. I saw you reading hundreds of newspapers and books. You're prepared. You prepared yourself for war. So when the harsh reality of life attacks your peace, you will be ready for the battle. I was prepared for the mental and psychological war in society, as I was for the physical one in prison. He closed his eyes for a second and then said, hey, you remember the homie D tried to escape from Lawson? And when he was going over the fence, his girlfriend pulled up and opened fire on the guard in the tower? Hell yeah, she liked that. Slim, that's the type of girl you need when you get out there. Don't settle for nothing less. Crazy part about what he just said is, I had just got a letter from the CO chick that used to write me all the time. She was still adamant about me coming home and staying with her. But I felt that staying with a woman after doing prison time is like going from one prison to another. I needed my own space, my own place to think, my own place to relax and figure out life. The last thing I needed was someone with expectations of what I'm supposed to be doing and when I'm supposed to be doing it. I had to move at my own pace. If I crash, then that's on me. I could live with that. But if I'm pushed into crashing, then I couldn't live with that. I told her I appreciated the gesture, but no, I have to figure it out on my own. She was disappointed because she had prepared her room for me to stay with her and she was ready to quit her job. Shorty was moving too fast. That was not a place I needed to be. Chapter 265. I won. 2011. The next day I went to my counselor's office. She said the paperwork for the halfway house was completed and approved. It was 4 months from when the judges ruled that the parole board had violated my rights by overstepping their boundaries and sentencing me to time that they didn't have the authority to. I was supposed to be going home tomorrow morning. I packed my legal papers, photos, and letters into a laundry bag. The night before lockdown, I gave away all my clothing and cosmetics. I lay down in the bed and stared at the forever so familiar white walls. The same white walls I've been staring at since I was a child. The guys in the law library was happy for me. My family was happy for me. And my homies were extremely happy for me. It seemed that everybody was happy. Everybody but me. I wasn't happy. My thoughts were blank. I didn't know what to expect. I knew I had beaten them again, but I knew they didn't fight fair, so I stayed up all night, hoping to avoid any nightmares. In the morning, I walked onto the compound towards R&D. I waved at a few people on the other side of the pound. I waved at a few people in the windows. I saw smiles and raised fists. Men shook their heads in approval. A good man had made it. A good man was going home. A man that never compromised his morals or principles. A man that held his head high throughout the battles. A man that bettered himself despite all of the obstacles. Never dropped the soap. Never grabbed a rope. Never snitched on anyone, and never dropped the note. Always repped his city. Always repped his hood. Never got stabbed. Knock, knock on wood. It was always Lee's Law. Made Benny Lee unforgettable. Never been on PC neither. Whole resume impeccable. I had finally made it, but I was still skeptical. I still had my guards up, expecting the unexpected and venturing into hypotheticals. Once I got to R&D, I was given a button up and some Wrangler jeans again. I had a slight feeling of deja vu from when I was supposed to be released from Atlanta, when my case was overturned, and the other 2 times I was supposed to be released from DC jail. After 30 minutes in a cage waiting to be released, I heard some keys coming down the hallway. A guard called my name. Mr. Mowat. Yeah. He looked at an identification card and then I was handcuffed. What the fuck? Why am I being handcuffed?
Why am I being handcuffed?
I'm supposed to go home today.